just the craziest finish in futsal history. Jake Bassini went to the corner to wind down the clock. They pinched it and scored a goal.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new and improved episode of the series Futsal Scope. I'm here with Shaban Rajab to my right, the Mad Dog.
Excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to today's talking points. We've got some juicy stuff to get through, Costa.
And Jimmy Supers to my left. How are you, Jimmy?
Costa, I'm well. Thanks for having me back. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great actually. We're looking at the prospect of this episode. We've got some great talking points, some controversial stuff that you guys are going to love. But before we get into the controversial stuff, Shaban, I understand you have some news on the Pascovale front. You got in contact with Paul Vidic after last week's episode. How'd that go?
Yes, he got back to me a bit belatedly, but we did discuss. Firstly, he is continuing his role as manager, so he's going to continue coaching with Pascovale. He did inform me though, big news on the presidential side of things. Paul Taylor and Paul Taylor out. Simon Wondock is in. He's see it there, the graphic. Big news. Paul Taylor, I hear, has resigned. Mm-hmm. That's on the word of Paul Vidic, but I am hearing news that he might have also been kicked out by Pascovale. So I'm not really sure there. Paul Vidic's word is that he's resigned, but Paul Vidic is adamant that Pascovale probably won't go for a rebuilding. He says the team, he's glad teams are underestimating him from now, and that he's confident that his team will be competitive next season.
Well, we've spoken a lot about Pascovale, but before we continue, Jimmy, what's your prediction for Pascovale now with this new presidential roll in? How do you think this will change how they line up for next season?
Pascovale, it's hard to say. I think you need to look at the lineups and who's actually in the team and how they look in the opening game. Maybe if there's friendlies to come after this break, who knows? But I think Pascovale, it's such a big club. It's always been a big club, you know. It'd be hard to see them go down the table very far, you know. I mean, they'll always attract players, so it's hard. You just got to really wait and see. I think time will tell more than anything. But Paul Vidic is an experienced coach. He's won, 10 times, I think, himself, maybe more, maybe less. But he knows how the league works and who needs to be playing when and whatnot. So I think it's just hard to say. But they're in good hands is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Now, we aren't quite finished with Pascovale, because our next topic, one of the first of the controversial ones, is about perhaps the craziest futsal finish in futsal history, as Alex Siv said on the commentary that day. I believe it would have been in the intro. It spawned an abundance of questions, but the questions regard the rules and regulations of SFV, the integrity behind it. Shaban, I'll throw to you. Actually, I'll throw to Jimmy first. Upon witnessing that game, could you say that there was a blatant exploitation of maybe the lack of rules regarding the regulations between team selections and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say they did anything wrong by the league rules, because they didn't in that matter. In terms of integrity and I guess values, there was something done wrong to bring players for another team and have them play off against a championship side is wrong in anyone's eyes. But in the way the rules were set up, it's not wrong. So I think the rules were not tight enough and needed to be fixed. So
absolutely,
they took advantage of a situation that really shouldn't happen.
I think it's absolute blight on the spot. If I was a Moreland player, I wouldn't take too much pride in that title. I mean, they were very good all season. Don't take anything away in that sense, but the way it's come down in that final season, I guess there's a lot of questions around the integrity of how it was won and how the Wolves and Moreland essentially helped the Wolves field an A-class side. It was a good side for that game. I think that, I wouldn't be proud as a player to take that trophy home. You'd want to back it up, and it's not that they weren't good enough, but you'd want to back it up and make sure you win the next season and then say, look, we are good enough. So that'd be my aim. I do think that was an absolute travesty the way it happened.
Yeah.
So, and obviously, I think you touched on it. There's been a few rule changes now. I think the main one being the head-to-head rule, so which that implemented at the start of the season that's been cancelled. What do you guys think of it? Personally, I think it takes goal difference out of it, but I don't know. I don't think head-to-heads
when you're versing each team 3 times, I guess the head-to-head rule sort of does cancel out the goal difference system, because I could beat my Richmond, if they were in the series futsal, could beat Jimmy's Fitzroy side how many times? What, three out of 0 or 2 to 1?
Could be,
And then the goal difference sort of, what's the point in getting...
There's no point of it, yeah.
You can't equal. Goal difference would only come in if you were equal, and with 3 games against each other, you can't draw.
So I think it takes the value out of scoring goals. Like, doesn't matter if you win 10-5 or 1-0. It's the same result on the ladder at the end of the season. The goal difference is just thrown out.
Yeah, look, personally, I like goal difference. I think the head-to-head, it doesn't really tell a tale over a 21-week season. I think goal difference, you've put together a team that can score goals and you defend well. You've built this goal difference to win a league. A lot of leagues around the world are settled by goal difference and head-to-head as well. But personally, I like the goal difference, and I'm not a fan of the head-to-head at all, if I'm honest.
And speaking on rule changes, sorry to cut you off as well, so there was a collusion rule implemented as well. Mm-hmm. Do we have the specific wording on the collusion rule at all? But I believe, it's now that if it's obvious you were colluding, you will obviously have to face some sort of sanction. We're not entirely sure what they are as of yet. It's maybe something to follow up on.
Yeah, maybe something to ask the commission, but I'm not sure of the actual rule on that.
Yeah. And it's just, again, that was probably Pascovale's last chance to win a title. I know Paul Vidic thinks otherwise, but it could be.
And look, to be honest, with everything that did happen, Pascovale still had it in their hands. They were the better side on that day as well. It came down to a little bit of luck during the 5th man, and then
extremely unlucky goal for the
incredibly unlucky goal. For Andre to kick the ball into Joao, and then in my opinion was fouled as well, and the ball fell right at fell at Barzel's feet to score the goal. It's just incredible. And then for an experienced goalkeeper, just quickly like Reza, to tell a 21-year-old kid like Jake to go to the corner and shield the ball, he'll win it in penalties, which is what actually did happen on the night. Yeah. What are you going to do if you're Jake Bassini? You're going to take the ball to the corner with the way Reza played over the 3 games he was here. Yeah. It's only a no-brainer, And Jake wasn't the right player to shield the ball in the corner. That's the reality of it all. It should have been Andre or Joao that had the experience and would have kicked it out had they been in his situation. But I don't think it's entirely Jake's fault, as it was made out over social media and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But he did as he was told, as a young player would. And unfortunately, he made a mistake. So I think it was incredibly unlucky for Pascovale, but they played a better game than the Wolves that day, and they still deserve to win it. So I think, in regard of everything that's been said, I think Pascovale still let it slip themselves and should have won it themselves, because they did have it in their hands.
That's what I was about to say. Look, I thought Pascovale did it to themselves, and at the end of the day, you can say whatever about Moreland bringing in these players, the way the game ended, what Jake did, but I think that Pascovale had control, and it's a typical Pascovale mentality where they like to sit on a lead. They sit on a lead, and they were only 2-0 up, I think, or something like
3-1.
3-1 up, yeah. They like to sit on the lead, didn't attack anymore, and let the Wolves bring the game to them, and that's what happened. I think they panicked. I think they'd lost it before the game mentally. They were, if you talk to some of the boys, they already thought they were hard done by with all the players coming in. So it's, I do think they did it to themselves.
Well, we can predict how the season could have ended up, but we do have an interview snippet with Alejandro Gomez, who's now back in Spain, who stated that he believes that, in his eyes, Pascovale are the champions. Speaking of last season, who are the SFV champions in your eyes?
Oh, of course. I always say, my friends here, even Moreland guys, that despite that I don't have the picture with the trophy, that actually I have it. Despite of that, with the picture with my teammates, I feel that trophy like mine. I know I'm the champions of that trophy, and honestly, I think even people they know that we deserve it, that we work hard for it. So it's what I'm telling you, that it's not that important when you do the sum up of the whole season. It's not that important to see how many trophies you have in your house, but how did you do things, how how good you work, how was the final result of your playing, of everything is sum up of a lot of things. So actually, it's not that important to have the medal.
Yeah.
But even though I feel it like mine.
Well, we'll talk about their form throughout the season. Sharben, Carlton were, I'd say, out of the title race by round 15. When you were looking at the title race from the outside looking in, who did you think was going to take it by the end?
Oh, geez. I thought Pascovale. It was Pascovale or Moreland all the way. They were both good sides. I thought Moreland had the power, the player power, but Pascovale had pipped them twice, I think, in important games, and I think that's why Pascovale probably, or I saw them as the genuine title. It was their title to lose. So, that's my opinion. But Moreland was always there. Like, it was very close.
The greatest finish in futsal history.
Amazing.
Well, this does lead into the conversation of money in futsal. Perhaps it goes bigger than just paying players. We're all aware of the payments and the wages, in a sense, that the players receive. But the problematic idea of money in futsal perhaps goes deeper than just wages. It shows hints of secrecy within the clubs. What do you think, Sharps?
Yeah, I think I don't know why there's secrecy around it. Obviously, if you're a player, you don't as a club owner, you don't want players knowing who earns what, because it could cause some discourse. But there's a lot of secrecy around which clubs are actually paying clubs. We can all guess which clubs are paying players. Sorry.
Well, it's on the screen.
Yeah, but and we have an inkling, and there's a lot more than that. But the amounts, I don't know. I think it would be a good thing for other clubs to know, so they can sort of start to get a feel of what it's going to be like to have to compete in future and start to organise themselves. And people don't know if it's 50 a game, 1,000 a game, and I think it, as we move forward, contracts will become a big part of it, and there'll be more open knowledge.
Jimmy, do you think contracts should be a prominent part of the series futsal wage system that is maybe kept a secret for now, but for the future?
Yeah, definitely. In the long term, I think contracts and wages should all be documented, of course. And it comes with time, though. I don't think the league was ready to have money implemented into it. Yep. I still don't think it's ready to have money in the league. I think right now it's still in a growing stage. It is good, don't get me wrong, but I don't think as an overall it is ready for it. I think players haven't been built to be professionals in terms of being paid. So that includes social media, that includes how they carry themselves with interviews and whatnot. You see a lot of these players that do get paid not refuse interviews, which professional players can't do. So
I think that's a joke. You shouldn't refuse an interview.
Correct.
You're representing the club. I know you're predominantly there to play on the field, but I think any player, whether you're getting paid or not, especially if you're getting paid, you should be doing interviews if requested. It's part of, you watch any grand sport in the world, it's part of improving TV rights and bringing in money, genuine money into the sport.
Yeah, no, so that's what I'm getting at. So I don't think it's ready for that step yet, but it's there. So now you have to deal with it, and the other clubs need to catch up. And even in that sense, it's not every player in these teams. It's certain players being paid, and in the long-term contracts and transfer fees and wages all need to be documented and noted by other clubs. But right now, it's still in a growing phase, so it can't be. But yeah, that's my view on the whole money situation.
And money doesn't always translate to success. We know that. We saw Moreland in their first season. They came up state league. They had Adam Coop on the list, but a lot of Baragos, Rogovsky, Shine Legend that played Ben Monti, and they got relegated. They had good names, but they got relegated. They finished dead last. And I think you asked Damon about it. He would have been embarrassed by it, and credit to him, he bounced back like a champion, and he learned a lot from it. That's the main thing. But it doesn't always translate to success. I think Camberfield probably done a lot better job at it than what Moreland did in their first season.
Well, last season was their first season, and they put up a fight throughout the season. They finished outside of relegation. What do you think went wrong with that Moreland side that originally got relegated? Was it perhaps money would have been new to the system with in futsal, so maybe they were getting a bit complacent. Maybe they were happy with where they were. They were a new team.
Yeah, I think D-Man just went and got the wrong players. He got players based on reputation. A lot of those players were either out of the game for a while or were overdone, old players, or players that just weren't super committed. You know, they were only there to earn that money. So, you know, D-Man set the blueprint, Morland set the blueprint for paying players, but it took a bit of time before he realised, I've got to bring in players that, sure, I've got the money to bring them in, but they've also got to have the right attitude, which is, a big part of why they failed the first time round.
Well, as the conversation with money in futsal continues, there's definitely comments to be made on where these clubs should be spending their money. They're paying their players, but I'll ask you, Jimmy, first. Should they be spending their money elsewhere, maybe investing in a youth team or a women's team, or trying to structure their club properly rather than just paying players out of their pocket like Campbellfield will to train? Some of them get paid to play social league. That's what the rumours state.
Yeah, definitely. I think the club should look to build and make genuine futsal clubs. I think that's how we're going to move forward, which I'll touch on a little bit later. But yeah, I think definitely you're right. They should be spending the money in investing in the future and in a club culture, which comes from having women's and youth and juniors in the club as well. Mm-hmm. So I think you're definitely right in that sense where it should be spent differently. But I mean, it's their choice at the moment, so they can spend it as they wish.
I think just speaking from experience at the moment, where Fitzroy and Carlton are two clubs that don't pay players, but have a strong youth, women's, junior system. So for teams that don't have that money that are going to be able to compete with big teams that are going to be recruiting, I think it's essential to have that junior structure to be able to compete in the future, because you can always continue to build your own product. You can always find players out of there. Whereas if you just relying on picking up superstars and you don't have that cash, you're going to be left behind.
Well, does it go into the conversation of professionalism in the clubs, Jimmy? Do you think there needs to be more professionalism within the league with the likes of D-Men's Moreland or Q's Campbellfield? I mean, they're good, they're quality teams, and they're bringing quality players, but is that lack of professionalism going to catch up to them in the future, do you think, if they don't start turning into a club rather than a team?
Look, catch up to them, I don't know. It's hard to say whether they would be caught with the money they're spending now. But I think, the professionalism is definitely something that needs to improve across the whole league. But that's only natural. Only natural that a semi-professional league would need to grow. The players need to grow. You almost need an image on these players, which we don't get. You need to build stars and characters that people can aspire to and say, we want to be like, Cosmo Russo. We want to be like Scott Rogan, who are not figures in themselves. They're great players, fantastic people, but they don't put themselves out there as an Andre Caro would or a Jake Bassini. So we need more of that in the league to build stars, and that builds professionalism with people wanting to follow the stars. So I think in a small sense that's one view of it, but obviously off the court, social media, there's plenty to go into it, but that's a first step. I think we need stars to build off. Yeah,
I think on Costa's point about professionalism, one of the teams that I think has suffered most in regards to professionalism is probably Western Wolves, who have had the money to bring in players, but you see how much they lack in their professionalism. They don't get the players on the bench all the time. They don't have the right kit, the right bibs all the time. They don't always have their managers there. So it's not a great look for them. They were headed to something more professional this season before COVID hit. But I think it's Wolves would have probably won a trophy earlier had they had that level of professionalism, which didn't cost them 1 or 2 games there. And I think before teams start to build junior structures and things like that, they can focus on what they have there in front of them, which is their basic team of 14 players and their manager and maybe their assistant manager, and get your uniforms right, get your bibs right.
Start following the rules a bit better. Have your team in full kits, wear your bibs on the bench. Maybe submit a selection of players that are actually coming, or just make life easier for the workers while you conduct yourself.
And
a bit better.
trust me, as a team organizer, there's nothing better than knowing that you've got everything set and ready to go. Rocking up, I've had these moments where you rock up and I don't have enough uniforms, I don't have enough bibs, I've got to run left and right to try and find change uniforms or whatever. It throws your whole team off. And it'll cost you that one goal difference, or it'll cost you that one game even. So I think it's massive. It's somewhere where all teams can improve going down the track.
Well, as we discussed the structure of clubs, I believe Jimmy has a proposal for a structural change in every league itself, every elite league itself, from State 3 to SFV. Jimmy, what do you have to propose to the cameras?
So look, I think before we get into it all, I think it's important to touch on that back in the end of the 2011-12 season, there was a 12-team competition back then. So leading up to that season, it was always 12 teams. And prior to that season, the teams were notified that 4 clubs would be instantly relegated, when 3 of them were usually getting a playoff.
How many leagues were
so there was
involved?
3 at the time, I believe. So the State League and the League One at the time. So 4 clubs were relegated, I think including Moreland and Carlton at the time, who were in Serious Futsal Victoria, or the Nike V-League as it was known. And those 4 clubs were relegated, and every division became 8. And slowly we grew to League 2 and to League 3 to have 5 top divisions. But I think now, looking at it, it can be done differently. So this is how the league looks right now. 8 clubs in the top flight, 8 in the second division, the third, the fourth, and the fifth.
Yeah.
So my proposal to the commission, which has been put forward, is for League 2 and 3 to be completely scrapped, and the top division to have 12 clubs, which you'll see on your screen now as an example of the State League clubs. This would, back from the coronavirus break, promote 4 clubs to Serious Futsal Victoria, and have them take part in Serious Futsal Victoria. That would leave then 12 clubs in the State League and 12 clubs in the State League 1 competition, played at Brunswick, and the State League Championship here on a Sunday at Thomastown. So my belief is the best things to come out of this structural change would be clubs like Vic Friendship and Preston and Melbourne Athletic. Some of these clubs are on the verge of falling apart and not existing anymore.
Especially with COVID-19 at the moment.
Correct,
There'll be a few of them that will struggle past them. So I'll be interested to see which teams get past that. To
move into Serious Futsal Victoria would be easier for them to grow, in my opinion. So you can attract players, sponsors, followings in Serious Futsal Victoria better than you can in the State League Championship. I think the league can become a little monotonous, playing everyone 3 times, and you lose value in the big games. So to do this would mean playing everyone twice in a 22-round season, and it would really add value to the big games. It would add variety to the competition. You'd play clubs you'd never played before.
Well, it would improve the head-to-head rule too, with the goal difference actually meaning something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if the head-to-head rule was to hang around, I think it would definitely impact that, because if you tie 1-1, then goal difference is still an issue. So you need to score goals to ensure that you don't leave anything to chance. But yeah, look, I think growing the clubs, like we spoke about earlier, growing genuine futsal clubs, I think you can do that by bringing new people into the competition. So your Prestons, your Vic Friendships, Melbourne Athletic, Regent as well. Something else to talk about on top of growing clubs and really pushing forward with the league and the sport is you look at the last 5 seasons. Yeah. So Carlton Hart twice played off to stay in the league, finishing in 6th. Camberfield was once. Brunswick and Hume finished the season with 8 wins to be in a relegation playoff. Now, to be in 6th place and win 8 games, recording 24 points, really does that justify being in a relegation playoff? In my eyes, no. And Regent City as well, with how competitive they were, to be in 8th place and relegated, doesn't really make sense. If you're finishing in 12th and 11th, you deserve a relegation playoff. Because really you haven't had enough success to warrant being in the league.
And then the team playing the promotion battle just needs to win the 2 games in that little period there. So, which I think on your day, if you have one good game, you pretty much set yourself up for that promotion, which isn't really telling of how your season will go.
Correct. And I think since the league's taken a step forward in its professionalism, the State League clubs that finish 3rd just can't compete. They've got, if you finish 3rd, you've almost got no chance of beating the 6th place team, which makes the 2 legs almost irrelevant. So you're playing off against 10th place. It's a big difference. You can back yourself to beat a Preston, to beat a Vic Friendship if they're down there, beat Melbourne Athletic. if you're in the state league, you're in North Melbourne, a Baldwin, you can actually beat these guys over 2 games and find a place in Series Futsal Victoria, then pushing yourself on to grow. So that's some big change. I think in that would be, we've already moved to Wednesday and Friday clashes. I think that would include Sunday evening games, which could entice families to come down, on the weekend, 5-6 o'clock kickoff like we used to have as well. Having 2 games in that time slot would only bring more fans. You got then 3 match days in a week. I think that would be fantastic. And it would also add to the FOS Cup as well, but we'll touch on that in a second.
Do you think it will dilute the talent through the competition?
There's definitely some players that we want to see in the league, like James Ignatides. Fundi needs to be back in the league, I think. Every season he plays, he's so influential for that region side. But I think there would be a lot of players that wouldn't be up to standard, to be honest.
Yeah, so I think that's why it dropped from 12 to 8 in the first place.
Look, definitely it did drop from 12 to 8 for that reason, and we did have success with that. But I think now we're ready to move forward with a bigger pool of players. And you see someone like Preston, who didn't make the league, lost some of their top talent when otherwise would have held on to it,
That's right.
and been able to continue competing at the top level. Because they played Pascovale losing 3-2 or 4-2, I think 2 seasons in a row.
In the
so they weren't
Cup
that far
and the
off.
Clubs Cup,
The Clubs Cup twice, I think. So they weren't that far off. And you're right, the talent won't be, the competition won't be as even to start off with. But like I said, you got
it'll even out.
Good administrators in these clubs that can move forward and will look to bring players and new people into the league, a fresh look to the league, and help the league move forward.
Aki's a machine.
Aki
he's able to bring in players, and
level.
I think if he does get to Series Futsal, he's one of those that he could really turn things around. We've seen other clubs do it. I think he just gets a taste of it. They might get relegated, which happens. It happened to Moreland, it happened to Carlton. He might get relegated, but Aki's one of those that could really turn the club into a power club, I think.
And even at the same time, before you go, Costa, sorry, but someone like Big Friendship as well has brought players like Michael Nguyen into the league, Kevin Lamb, Doi Nguyen, players who have such talent and quality that otherwise never really would have been seen. Melbourne Athletics brought in Ben Grillo, Tom Harris really came to Providence there, Joel Kelsall as well. So really, there's so much talent in that league that can be solidified, and you'll get more players coming to these Series Futsal teams, and then let the state league clubs grow. More people want to play Series Futsal, and there is enough talent in the state league to build good clubs. They just need the opportunity, and I think over the course of time, I think 12 clubs makes total sense for Series Futsal to move to, and it would limit clubs like Regent being relegated and having to start again, lose players, when really Regent didn't deserve to be relegated. They lost, what did we say last week? 8 penalty shootouts.
7 games or something.
You win a couple of those, you're in with a chance. You have clubs that are a bit closer to you, like Melbourne Athletic, like Preston. You can get a win or 2 there. You find yourself safe. You can continue building forward. Maybe they don't lose Abdullahi Mohammed, who's known as Peter around the league. You don't lose him as a manager and an organiser who was doing a good job. But under such pressure because he was on the bottom of the ladder in what was a very, very tough league.
At the brunt of many articles, many talking point articles and hashtags.
Who writes those?
Yeah, I don't know.
But just back on your point, I think back when we went from 12 to 8 teams, we have to remember the V-League back then. Futsal Laws only operated at the 1 centre. So now we've got the 3 centres, and like you said, there's a growing talent pool. So they just got to be found, they've got to be harnessed. And obviously there's a bigger junior base than there ever was. So there is definitely a case to go back from 8 to 12 where we have expanded across Victoria.
Well, look, it's not like these clubs don't have ambitions, the ones that could be promoted. Last season we saw Preston, Melbourne Athletic, and who else was it? Regent. They all had their youth teams, and they were decent youth teams. They weren't hard to verse. I was versing them.
That's correct. Yeah. So that was another point. These clubs, who I've just thrown on the screen, but really they hold value to the league. They possibly could have kept their youth teams had they been in Series Futsal Victoria.
And
had
Big
they
Friendship too.
Big Friendship always had one as well. They could have held on to these players longer if they had this pathway to say maybe a player gets injured, a player's not available, and they get a run in Series Futsal Victoria. The camera is a big thing, obviously, for a lot of players, and I think that's a big push. And on top of all this, in doing all this, I think the Futsalers Cup can have a real revamp. I know Shaban thinks otherwise, but to run into it, it's got such history in this competition. I remember as a kid watching the competition, teams used to fight tooth and nail to win this competition, and it ran over 3 weeks from the top 8 when it was 12 teams. So it can either be the top 8 or the top 10. So that's 9, including the state league winners. And there's plenty of options to run with that, which have been put forward. But I think it adds value to run it over 3-4 weeks and have a big grand final and a big lead up to it, rather than just as it is now.
I still think
two or three
Clubs
match
Cup.
days.
I still think Clubs Cup is the new cup that teams will aspire to now. I know we say about Foss Cup, not to take away from it, but I think Clubs Cup is just a more inclusive competition to everyone, and it's it's a Foss Cup is basically the same teams. I know they'll be more involved with your structure, but it's the same teams that have played all season, so they've already sort of proven that during the season that you're a better side by finishing on top on the ladder or whatever. I think being able to do a cup style tournament where you play teams from the bottom leagues who I think showcases their talent and will also give an opportunity for your youth. And also give the opportunity of the lower league teams to obviously play against the big teams. I think Clubs Cup for me has overtaken and probably will continue to be ahead of the Foss Cup, especially as it stands now. Who knows, your structure might change that.
So just on that, I think in the current structure, I think yes, you're right, 100%. But now imagine a final series at the end of the season where you really need to put everything in to win this competition. Right now, you play the Foss Cup, you play the same teams you've played 3 times and you played 3 weeks ago.
And
but if you
only
see
a week later
a round
sometimes.
2 or 3 match, Moreland versus Pascovale, that'll then be in round 13 or 14. So you haven't seen Moreland play Pascovale for 3 months. And then you see this game in the Foss Cup, it's a massive game. It becomes a huge game to watch, and you haven't seen it so many times. I think that's the biggest idea behind it, and you get a final series at the end of it, which can really be marketed well.
That's where we disagree, though. I really don't like the idea of a final series. I think that's like an Australianised idea. Were you going to say that?
No.
Sorry. I think it's an Australianised idea. I think we don't. Leagues all around the world don't have a final series, and that's essentially what the Foss Cup is. And and that's why I like the Clubs Cup. That's why I like the FA Cup, because it's not just you finish 4th. Top 4, and now you have a chance of being premiers, champions. I know. I think Serious Futsal's good like that. The team that wins the Foss Cup isn't seen as the champions; it's the team that wins the league, which I think is how it should be. I really hate the idea of a final series, because you've had your season, you've proven you're the best.
Well, we don't have to just look at it as a post-season tournament. We can look at it as a bit of a pre-season thing too, as a way to see the newly transferred players maybe. So if Pascovale lose their players, they bring in Fabio Albuquerque, they have a tournament, the whole side's fresh. If that team can win the trophy, I'm sure that would get a lot of people talking. Don't you reckon, Jimmy?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's something that did happen with Fabio, and I think Leo Campara played in the Futsal's Cup, and they fell short in the end. But really, it does give you an opportunity to showcase even young talent. We saw over the last couple of years, young players have gotten more of a go in the Foz Cup. So, look, I think the tournament personally still holds value. I know, Shaban, you disagree, but I think with the restructure and a fresh look coming back from this long break, I think is great for the league and the cup in any sense. So.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I remember when we won our first Force Cup, I wanted that trophy. I still really want a Clubs Cup, because you don't have one. When you don't have one, you really crave it.
But how much do you want it after you win it?
That's correct. Yeah, you always want to win the league, and the Clubs Cup, I think, is something that as well. It really tests your depth, tests your endurance, because you're playing a couple games a week, back to back. Sometimes you don't want to risk senior players as you test your youth out. I think there's a lot more tactical areas around the Clubs Cup at the moment. So. As it stands, I agree. I do agree with you. If it does change, there would be more value to it. But yeah, I don't think teams, once they have it, really aspire to win it. You see players being rested for those sorts of cups at the moment. Yeah.
Well, that just about wraps it up. We've had a good discussion. It's definitely not over. It's certainly not finished. We'll definitely keep having this discussion behind the scenes. But please tell us your opinions.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. Yeah, I'd like to know. Let us know what you want us to talk about as well in future episodes.
Don't let us starve of content.
Yeah.
But anyway, other than that, thanks for watching. Some final words from Shaban.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Next week, we've got some big news coming in regards to Wee Froth and some more talking points, so don't miss out. It's been a great show.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, guys. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you can tune in again next week.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.